A diver expected just another routine dive until he stumbled upon a train wagon lying on the ocean floor. And what he found inside would leave the world in disbelief. Alex Thompson had been diving for years, exploring sunken ships, underwater caves, and hidden treasures scattered across the ocean floor. Every dive brought him excitement, but also a sense of calm that only came from being deep underwater, surrounded by silence and the gentle sway of sea life. On this particular day, the sky was clear, and the sea was unusually calm. It's almost like it was holding its breath, waiting for something extraordinary to happen. Alex checked his equipment carefully, as he always did, making sure every gauge, every strap, and every tank was perfectly in place. The anticipation of the unknown made his heart race. He slipped into the water, feeling the familiar cold embrace of the ocean. The surface shimmered above him, sunlight dancing through the water, creating patterns on the sand below. As he descended, the world above faded away, replaced by the soft blue light of the deep. The usual sounds of waves and seagulls disappeared, leaving only the rhythmic sound of his own breathing echoing through his mask. It was a feeling Alex loved, the quiet, the solitude, and the sense that beneath the surface, the ocean kept its secrets closely guarded. As he swam deeper, Alex's eyes scanned the seabed. He had explored this area before, or at least he thought he had, but something today felt different. The currents were gentler, the water clearer. The usual schools of fish seemed to move with unusual precision, almost as if guiding him toward something. He adjusted his fins and moved carefully, not wanting to disturb the sand that could reveal or hide what lay beneath. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it, a dark, rectangular shadow lying on the ocean floor, partially covered in sand and seaweed. At first, he thought it might be a large rock or debris from a nearby shipwreck. But as he got closer, his heart skipped a beat. The shape was unmistakable. The straight edges and the size hinted at something man-made, something that did not belong to the natural underwater world. Alex's mind raced with possibilities. Could it be a sunken boat? A container lost from a ship? He had never seen anything like it in this area. As he drew nearer, he noticed the outline more clearly. It was a train wagon, lying quietly as if it had been placed there intentionally. The thought was almost unbelievable. How could a train wagon, a massive piece of human engineering, end up here, miles away from any tracks or land? The mystery made Alex's pulse quicken. He circled the wagon slowly, taking in every detail. The exterior was encrusted with barnacles and corals that had grown over decades, giving it a strange, almost otherworldly appearance. The metal was rusted in places, but surprisingly intact in others. And the doors were sealed tight by years of pressure and sediment. Alex reached out, brushing away some of the sand with his gloved hand, revealing faint markings on the side of the wagon. He squinted to read them through his mask. They were letters and numbers, worn but partially visible, suggesting that this wagon had once traveled on tracks far from here. He wondered what kind of cargo it might have carried, what stories it could tell if only it could speak. The idea of stepping into a piece of forgotten history sent a shiver down his spine. This wasn't just another wreck or a random piece of debris. It was a relic, frozen in time, holding secrets that no one had seen for decades. For a moment, Alex paused, hovering in the water. The silence around him felt profound. Tiny fish darted around the wagon, their movements almost reverent, and a gentle current made the water sway like a slow-motion dance. He felt a strange connection to this place, as if the ocean itself had chosen him to discover this hidden secret. He adjusted his flashlight, pointing it at the wagon to see better in the dim light. The door was rusted shut, but Alex knew he would find a way to open it. What lay inside could be anything: old equipment, personal belongings, perhaps something more valuable and historically significant. The deeper he looked, the more he noticed. The wagon's wheels were partially buried in sand, its frame surrounded by small rocks and coral formations. Time had been kind in some ways, preserving its structure, yet the ocean had also left its mark. Alex imagined the wagon in its original glory, traveling on rails, carrying goods and people to unknown destinations. The contrast between its past life and its current resting place on the ocean floor fascinated him. Every detail seemed to tell a story, from the scratches on the metal to the faded paint and the barnacles that clung stubbornly to its surface. Alex's excitement grew with every passing minute. He had encountered many underwater mysteries before, but there was something different about this. The wagon seemed almost alive, like a sleeping giant waiting for someone to uncover its secrets. He thought about the possibilities. Perhaps it had been part of a train that sank during a storm. Or maybe it had been intentionally placed here long ago. The ocean kept its secrets well, but Alex felt closer than ever to unraveling one of them as he swam around it once more. He took careful notes and photographs, documenting every angle. He knew this find could be of historical importance, and he wanted to capture it thoroughly before disturbing anything. The thrill of discovery mixed with the responsibility of preserving history made him both excited and cautious. Alex realized that this dive could change everything he thought he knew about this area of the ocean, and perhaps even uncover a story that had been lost for decades. The deeper he looked, the more convinced he became that this was only the beginning. Something inside the wagon called to him, whispering promises of discovery and adventure. He couldn't wait to see what lay beyond the rusted doors, to finally touch the objects that had rested here in silence for so long. The ocean had revealed a secret, and Alex was the first person in decades to witness it. He felt a surge of gratitude and awe, knowing that some moments in life were rare and unforgettable. This was certainly one of them. Time seemed to slow as he hovered there, staring at the wagon. The usual fears of diving, strong currents, sharp rocks, or sudden changes in weather, faded into the background. Nothing else mattered except the wagon and the mysteries it held. The ocean around him seemed almost sacred, as if it were guarding the story, waiting for the right person to uncover it. Alex knew he had stumbled upon something extraordinary, something that would stay with him forever. And the excitement of what came next filled him with a mixture of nervousness and exhilaration. With a deep breath, Alex prepared to explore further, knowing that the first glance was only the beginning. The train wagon on the ocean floor was more than an object. It was a doorway to the past, a tangible link to stories long forgotten. The anticipation of what lay inside made his pulse quicken. He could almost feel the history pressing against the walls, waiting to be revealed. And he knew that this dive would be remembered for the rest of his life. Alex Thompson's heart was still racing from the sight of the train wagon resting on the ocean floor. He hovered above it for a moment, the quiet of the deep surrounding him like a thick blanket. The water seemed almost to hold its breath, as if waiting for him to make the next move. Every instinct in his body told him this was not an ordinary discovery. He had explored countless wrecks, but the way this wagon sat, untouched and almost hidden by the sand and seaweed, made him feel that he was standing at the edge of history. With careful, deliberate movements, he adjusted his fins and swam closer, studying the wagon from every angle. The exterior of the wagon was rough and textured, with layers of coral, barnacles, and sea plants clinging to its surface. Time had left its mark. The metal was rusted in places, and small dents and scratches hinted at a turbulent past. Yet despite the years it had spent underwater, the structure was remarkably intact. The wagon seemed almost proud, holding its form with dignity beneath the weight of the ocean. Alex traced his gloved fingers along the edges, brushing away a few stubborn barnacles to reveal faded letters and numbers etched into the metal. He squinted through his mask, trying to decipher what they could mean. These markings suggested the wagon had once been part of a cargo train, a relic of commerce and travel long forgotten. Alex's curiosity was a physical force pushing him forward. He carefully examined the doors, which were sealed tightly by years of water pressure and corrosion. The locks were rusted but still present, and he wondered what could be inside. He imagined boxes of goods, crates of personal belongings, or even something valuable that had been transported long ago and forgotten when the wagon sank. Each thought made his pulse quicken. The unknown was exhilarating. He swam around the wagon, inspecting every angle. Small fish darted in and out of the coral formations, seemingly uninterested in the strange human presence in their domain. Light from his flashlight illuminated patches of sand and rock around the wagon, revealing tiny details he had not noticed before. He saw what looked like footprints in the sand, possibly left by other divers long ago, but they faded quickly in the shifting water. Nothing, however, had disturbed the wagon itself. It remained like a time capsule. It's perfectly preserved in its underwater world. Alex decided he needed to approach this systematically. He took out his underwater camera and began documenting the wagon in detail. Every side, every corner, every marking was photographed. He wanted a record of its current state before attempting to open it. There was a responsibility that came with discovering something like this, an obligation to preserve history. If he damaged the wagon or its contents, it would be a loss not just for him, but for everyone who might study it in the future. After photographing the exterior, Alex turned his attention to the door. He examined the hinges, noting that rust had weakened some of the metal. He realized that with careful effort he could open it, but he would have to be extremely cautious. One wrong move, and decades of preserved history could be lost forever. He probed around the edges with his diving tool, slowly loosening the accumulated corrosion. Time seemed to stretch as he worked, each moment filled with the tense thrill of discovery as he tested the door. Alex noticed small details that made the experience even more surreal. Bits of sea life clung stubbornly to the metal, tiny crabs and fish exploring the wagon as if it were their own home. The water around him was calm, but the light from his flashlight flickered slightly with the movement of the current. Shadows danced across the wagon's surface, creating patterns that made the structure seem almost alive. Alex felt as though he was not just uncovering a piece of history, but stepping into a story that had waited decades to be told. His mind raced with possibilities. What if this wagon contained personal belongings of people who had long since disappeared? What if there were letters or journals detailing lives from a time long gone? The idea that he could touch objects that had been untouched for decades thrilled him. The ocean had kept this secret safe, but now, for the first time in many years, someone had the chance to uncover it. Alex felt a sense of honor and responsibility, knowing that his careful work could reveal a story that might otherwise have been lost forever. He examined the interior through the small gaps in the door. Faint shapes and outlines suggested the wagon had been used for cargo, with rows of crates and containers stacked neatly. It looked as though the wagon had been frozen in the moment it sank, the contents untouched by the years of water around them. The idea of crates holding perfectly preserved items excited Alex. He could feel the story inside. Like a heartbeat waiting to be discovered, Alex took a deep breath and prepared to open the door. He knew this was a moment that required both patience and precision. With careful, deliberate movements, he pried at the rusted metal, feeling the give of years of corrosion slowly loosening. Each small movement revealed more of the wagon's interior, and Alex's excitement grew. He imagined what he would find: objects, letters, perhaps even treasures of historical significance. The possibilities were endless, and each was more thrilling than the last. While working, Alex thought about the history of the area. The coast he was diving near had been a hub of trade decades ago. Ships would carry goods from distant cities, and trains would transport cargo to and from ports. How this wagon ended up on the ocean floor was a mystery he could not yet solve. Perhaps it had fallen from a dock or been swept away during a storm. Perhaps it had been part of a larger incident, a story that had never been recorded. The questions only added to the excitement of the moment. Minutes passed, which felt like hours in the stillness of the deep. Finally, the door began to move, creaking slowly as rust gave way. A small gap appeared, revealing the darkness inside the wagon. Alex peered in, his flashlight cutting through the shadows. Shapes of crates and objects were visible, stacked neatly as if someone had placed them there just moments ago. The reality of the discovery hit him. This was more than just a train wagon. It was a time capsule, a window into the past preserved by the ocean. Alex felt a surge of exhilaration mixed with reverence. He had found something rare, something precious, not just for its potential value, but for its ability to tell a story about people, commerce, and travel from decades ago. He knew that every item inside could hold secrets about lives lived long before him. The thought that he was the first person to witness this wagon in so many years filled him with awe. With careful movements, he continued to document the exterior and the small glimpse he had of the interior. He knew that more preparation would be needed to fully explore the contents, but the first step had been taken. The wagon had revealed a hint of its secrets, enough to ignite a burning curiosity in Alex. He swam around it again, making sure he had every angle recorded. Each moment underwater felt like part of a larger story unfolding, a story he had been lucky enough to step into. Alex finally hovered back, taking a moment to look at the wagon as a whole. It rested on the ocean floor, silent and still, holding decades of secrets in its metal frame. He felt a connection to the past, as if he had reached through time itself. The ocean had kept this secret for decades, and now, carefully, he would help it tell its story. The adventure was only beginning, and the anticipation of what lay inside the wagon filled him with excitement and wonder. Alex Thompson had spent hours circling the train wagon, documenting its exterior, and carefully loosening the rusted door. His excitement had grown with every detail he uncovered, but nothing could have prepared him for the moment he finally peered inside. As he slowly pried the door open, the creaking metal echoed faintly underwater, a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet of the deep. A narrow beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing the first glimpse of the interior. At first, he could see only vague shapes, stacks of crates, carefully arranged and untouched for decades. The water had preserved them surprisingly well. The wood and metal showed signs of aging but remained intact. Alex hovered closer, his heart pounding, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The wagon, once thought to be a simple cargo carrier, was anything but ordinary. Each crate seemed deliberately placed, as if the person who had packed them had no idea they would one day rest on the ocean floor. Waiting to be discovered, he reached out cautiously. Brushing aside some of the sand and debris that had accumulated near the entrance, the smell of the ocean, cold and briny, filled his mask, mingling with a sense of awe. Alex's fingers trembled slightly as he touched the first crate. It was surprisingly sturdy, and he could feel the texture of the wood beneath his gloves. Gently, he tried to lift the lid, using all the care of someone handling a fragile artifact. The crate creaked, but finally gave way, revealing a treasure that made Alex's eyes widen. Inside were rows of antique objects, perfectly preserved by the cold, oxygen-poor water. There were musical instruments, violins, trumpets, and flutes there were darkened by years underwater but otherwise intact. Each instrument seemed to carry a silent story, as if waiting for someone to play them again. Alex marveled at the craftsmanship, imagining the hands that had made and played these instruments decades ago. The thought that they had survived underwater for so long was incredible. Beside the instruments, there were crates filled with stacks of old clothing. Fabrics that should have disintegrated over time were remarkably intact, preserved in the cool, salty water. Dresses, coats, and hats from another era lay folded neatly, their colors faded but recognizable. Alex ran his gloved hand over a delicate lace collar, feeling a strange connection to the people who had worn these clothes so long ago. He imagined them boarding a train, carrying their belongings with hope or anticipation, never knowing where fate would take them. Letters and journals were tucked in some of the crates, sealed in small waterproof containers that had remarkably withstood the ocean. Alex carefully opened one, revealing pages filled with handwritten notes. The ink had faded but remained legible, telling stories of daily life, travels, and personal thoughts. He could almost hear the voices of the writers, carried across decades by the ocean's currents. Each letter was a time capsule, offering a glimpse into a world long gone but preserved perfectly by this sunken wagon. The most astonishing discovery, however, was a small chest tucked in a corner of the wagon. Alex's pulse quickened as he approached it. The chest was made of dark wood, reinforced with iron bands and sealed tight with a rusted lock. With careful effort, he managed to pry it open, revealing a hoard of gold coins and antique jewelry. Their surfaces were dulled by time, but the craftsmanship and detail were unmistakable. Coins from various countries, some bearing dates from over a century ago, glittered faintly in the beam of his flashlight. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. The wagon was not just a historical relic, it was a hidden treasure, preserved by the ocean in a way that defied imagination. Alex floated back, taking in the full scope of what he had uncovered. The wagon, once thought to be a simple cargo carrier, was in fact a meticulously preserved collection of artifacts, each telling its own story. The musical instruments, The clothing, the letters, and the coins all painted a vivid picture of a time long past. Alex could feel the weight of history pressing against him. The realization that he had stumbled upon something truly extraordinary. He began to carefully examine each crate, documenting their contents with his camera. Every item he photographed would help historians and researchers understand not just what had been transported, but also the lives of the people who had relied on this wagon. The ocean had preserved these artifacts as if it knew their importance, shielding them from decay. And now, Alex was the first person in decades to witness them. As he moved from crate to crate, Alex felt a mixture of excitement and reverence. This was more than a treasure hunt. It was a journey into the past. He imagined the wagon on the train tracks long ago, filled with these precious items, moving through towns and countryside, carrying hopes, dreams, and everyday lives. The contrast between that bustling life and the silent, cold ocean floor was striking. Here, everything had been frozen in time, untouched by human hands, waiting for someone to rediscover it. The longer he explored, the more stories the wagon seemed to tell. A journal described a family preparing for a journey to a distant city. A letter hinted at a merchant sending goods to a partner across the country. A small doll, carefully placed in a crate, suggested a child's hope and innocence. Each artifact added layers to the story, making the wagon more than just a collection of objects. It was a window into human life from a century ago. Alex's excitement grew, but he remained cautious. He knew that preserving these items required care. One wrong move could destroy decades of preservation. He made mental notes on how each crate should be handled once brought to the surface. The process would be slow and meticulous, but he was determined to ensure that everything survived intact. He paused for a moment to let the magnitude of his discovery sink in. The sunken wagon was no longer just a curiosity. It was a historical treasure trove. The realization was almost overwhelming. Alex could feel the connection to the past stronger than ever, as if the people whose belongings he now saw had reached across time to tell their story. The ocean had hidden them, but it had also protected them. And now it was up to him to bring that story to light. Even in the quiet underwater world, Alex's mind raced with questions. How had the wagon ended up here? Was it part of a larger shipment? Were there more wagons lost nearby? Each question added to the thrill of discovery, hinting that this adventure was far from over. The wagon had given him a glimpse into the past, but it also promised more secrets waiting to be uncovered, hidden beneath the waves. As he prepared to surface, Alex took one last look inside the wagon. The crates, the instruments, the letters, and the coins all seemed to shine in the dim light. Each artifact a piece of a puzzle he was only beginning to understand. He knew that this dive would be remembered for the rest of his life. The wagon had revealed its secrets to him, and in doing so, it had changed his understanding of history, treasure, and the power of the ocean to preserve the past. With careful movements, he began his ascent, taking one final photo to capture the moment. The wagon on the ocean floor, with its unbelievable contents, would soon become the subject of historians, archaeologists, and the public alike. But for Alex, the memory of peering into that wagon for the first time, the thrill, the awe, the wonder, would remain unmatched. He had witnessed something extraordinary, a treasure frozen in time, and he had been the first to see it in decades. The ocean had kept its secret, and now finally it had shared it with him. Alex Thompson broke the surface of the ocean, gasping for air as he removed his mask. The sunlight felt warm and sharp compared to the cold, silent world he had just left behind. In his hands, he held the evidence of a discovery unlike any he had ever made. The train wagon, with its crates of instruments, letters, clothing, and even gold coins, had been safely documented underwater. But now the real challenge began, sharing this unbelievable find with the world. He knew that what he had uncovered could rewrite part of history, yet it had to be handled carefully. One wrong move and decades of preservation could be lost forever. Alex climbed into his small dive boat, shaking with a mixture of exhaustion and excitement. The adrenaline from the dive still coursed through his body, but it was now accompanied by a nervous awareness of responsibility. He carefully packed his equipment, double-checking that all photographs and initial documentation were secure. The wagon itself was still on the ocean floor, and retrieving it would require proper planning and coordination. He knew he could not attempt it alone. The items inside were too delicate, too historically important. Once back on land, Alex contacted the local marine authorities and archaeologists. At first, there was skepticism. Many people had claimed incredible underwater discoveries that turned out to be exaggerated or false. But when he showed them the photographs and the detailed notes of the wagon's exterior and partially visible interior, their reactions changed. Faces that had been serious and doubtful softened with amazement. Experts leaned closer, pointing at the images, whispering to one another about the significance of what Alex had found. This was not just a curiosity. It was a treasure of historical and cultural importance. The planning process began immediately. Marine archaeologists wanted to study the area carefully before any attempt to raise the wagon. They organized a team of divers, preservation specialists, and historians to ensure that every step would be executed properly. Alex was included in every discussion, sharing his first-hand knowledge of the site and guiding the team through the location's unique challenges. The excitement was palpable. Everyone involved understood that this could be a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. When the team finally returned to the site, the ocean looked deceptively calm. Alex led the descent, retracing the route he had taken during his initial dive. As he neared the wagon, he marveled once again at its presence on the ocean floor. The water seemed to shimmer differently now, as if aware of the attention it was receiving. The team began the careful process of stabilizing the wagon, attaching lifting slings and buoyancy aids. Every movement was deliberate, every action calculated to avoid damaging the contents inside. With the help of carefully positioned flotation devices and slow, controlled lifts, the wagon began its journey upward through the water. Alex watched as decades of history slowly emerged from the depths. The water around it filled with small particles and bubbles from the movement. It was a breathtaking sight. The rusty metal frame, crusted with coral and sea life, breaking through the surface as though returning to the world above after a long slumber. The wagon was finally out of the ocean, its secrets ready to be explored more closely, but still requiring delicate handling. Once on the deck, the team worked quickly to stabilize the wagon. They carefully covered it to protect it from sun, wind, and sudden temperature changes. Specialists prepared to remove the crates and begin a detailed study of the contents. Alex watched with anticipation as the first crates were gently opened. Each one revealed a glimpse of the extraordinary treasures he had first seen underwater: instruments, clothing, letters, and even coins, all remarkably preserved. The excitement was contagious. Historians carefully examined every item, noting its age, origin, and historical significance. Every detail told a story, a fragment of life long ago, now brought back to the present. News of the discovery spread rapidly. Journalists, photographers, and curious onlookers flocked to the site once permission was granted. Cameras clicked, and reporters whispered excitedly about the sunken train wagon and the treasure it contained. Alex found himself in the center of attention, answering questions, explaining the dive, and recounting the moment he first laid eyes on the wagon. He was careful not to exaggerate. The story was extraordinary enough without embellishment. The world had finally seen what he had discovered, and the response was overwhelming. Historians and archaeologists were particularly fascinated by the letters and journals. Each one was carefully cataloged and studied, revealing stories of families, merchants, travelers from a time long ago. Some letters described journeys to distant cities. Others mentioned trade deals or personal hopes and fears. Alex felt a strange connection to these long-forgotten people. Knowing that he had played a role in bringing their stories back into the light, every artifact was a piece of a larger puzzle, a glimpse into daily life from a century ago that had been hidden beneath the waves. The musical instruments and clothing received special attention from preservation specialists. The cold ocean water had preserved them in a way that was almost miraculous, but exposure to air could quickly cause damage. Every step of the process had to be carefully controlled. Alex watched as conservators meticulously cleaned and stabilized the items, marveling at the skill and dedication involved. He realized that uncovering history was only the first step. Preserving it required patience, expertise, care. The gold coins and jewelry were cataloged and secured, providing another layer of intrigue to the discovery. Numismatists and experts in antique artifacts examined each piece, identifying origins, dates, and historical context. The diversity of the coins suggested extensive trade networks and long journeys. Reinforcing the idea that this wagon had been part of a much larger story, Alex felt a thrill knowing that something he had seen with his own eyes would now be studied by experts and appreciated by people around the world. Over the following days, the team worked tirelessly to document every detail of the wagon and its contents. Photographs, notes, and videos captured the process, creating a permanent record of the discovery. Alex participated actively, guiding the team based on his first-hand knowledge of the site. Every crate, every artifact, every letter added to the understanding of the wagon's history. The more they studied, the more complex and fascinating the story became. As the news spread internationally, people marveled at the idea that something so extraordinary had been hidden for decades under the sea. Museums and historical societies expressed interest in studying and displaying the artifacts. Researchers recognized the discovery as a rare opportunity to understand daily life, trade, and travel from another era. For Alex, the attention was secondary to the joy of having uncovered a real piece of history, preserved by the ocean and now shared with the world by the end of the process. The wagon and its contents had become more than a simple curiosity. They had become a symbol of exploration, patience, and the enduring mystery of the sea. Alex felt an immense sense of pride and responsibility, knowing that he had played a crucial role in revealing this hidden story. The excitement of discovery had transformed into the satisfaction of seeing history preserved, appreciated, and studied for generations to come, even after the wagon was secured. Alex could not stop thinking about the ocean and the countless secrets it still held. The discovery had changed his life, deepened his love for the sea, and reinforced his belief that the world was full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. He realized that every dive, every exploration could hold the potential for something extraordinary. The wagon had revealed its secrets, and in doing so, it had inspired him and the world to look deeper, to seek out the stories hidden just beneath the surface. Alex Thompson watched as the final crate from the sunken train wagon was carefully lifted and secured. The months of planning, diving, documenting, and coordinating with experts had finally brought the underwater mystery into the light. Standing on the deck of the research vessel, he allowed himself a moment to absorb everything that had happened. The wagon, once hidden for decades beneath the ocean, had revealed its treasures, and the world was beginning to understand the magnitude of the discovery. For Alex, this moment was not just about fame or recognition. It was about connection to history, to the people whose belongings had been preserved, and to the endless mysteries of the ocean itself. The wagon's contents, now safely in the hands of conservators and historians, continued to amaze. Letters and journals revealed stories of families, merchants, and travelers from another time. Each one was like a whisper from the past, telling of hopes, fears, and daily life that had been frozen underwater for decades. As Alex read through some of the transcribed letters, he felt a profound sense of empathy for the people who had written them. Their dreams and struggles were no longer abstract history. They were tangible, live in the words preserved so carefully by the ocean. The clothing and textiles were equally captivating. Dresses, coats, and hats from a century ago, once delicate and long forgotten, had survived remarkably well. Alex could hardly believe that these items, submerged for so long, had not disintegrated. Conservators explained the unique properties of the water that had preserved them low oxygen. Cold temperatures and minimal disturbance combined to create the perfect conditions for preservation. Alex marveled at the ocean's quiet role in protecting history, understanding that nature itself had become an unwitting guardian of the past. The musical instruments, carefully cleaned and restored, produced soft, haunting sounds when tested. Violins, flutes, and trumpets from decades ago now sat in museum cases, ready to be studied and appreciated. Alex had imagined the sounds they might make long before, but hearing them in the present felt almost magical. Each note seemed to carry the weight of the past, resonating with the lives of those who had once played them. For him, the instruments were a reminder that history was not just objects or dates, it was the sound, color, and energy of real human experience preserved through time. The gold coins and jewelry became a topic of fascination for experts and the public alike. Numismatists studied the coins, identifying their origins, dates, and historical significance. Alex had initially thought of the coins as treasure in the traditional sense, but he quickly realized their true value lay in the stories they told. Each coin represented trade, travel, and connections across cities, countries, and continents. The jewelry, too, carried a personal touch: rings, necklaces, and brooches that had belonged to real people, worn and cherished long before they were submerged. The emotional weight of handling such intimate objects added a layer of reverence to the discovery that Alex had not anticipated. As word of the discovery spread, Alex found himself reflecting on the broader impact of his find. Museums and historical societies wanted to display the artifacts. Scholars and researchers saw new opportunities to study trade, culture, and daily life from the past. For the general public, the story of the sunken wagon sparked imagination and curiosity. Children listened wide-eyed as educators recounted the tale of a train wagon resting on the ocean floor, holding decades of forgotten history. Alex realized that the discovery had become more than just a personal achievement. It was a bridge between the past and the present, connecting people to a world that had long been hidden. Through this experience, Alex also learned about patience and the value of careful work. The process of recovering the wagon and preserving its contents had been slow and meticulous, but it was necessary. Every step required attention to detail, respect for the artifacts, and an understanding of how fragile history could be. He came to appreciate the dedication of the teams who worked alongside him: marine archaeologists, servitors, historians, and even photographers who documented the entire process. Their collective effort transformed a mysterious underwater relic into a story that could be shared and studied for generations. The personal impact on Alex was profound. He often thought about the people whose belongings had been lost to the ocean. What had their lives been like? What journeys had they taken that ended with this wagon sinking into silence? The artifacts provided answers in fragments, but the questions themselves lingered. Reminding Alex that history was never completed was a puzzle with pieces scattered across time and space. Being part of that process, helping to assemble some of the pieces, gave him a sense of purpose and fulfillment that went beyond any thrill of discovery. Even after the artifacts were recovered, Alex continued to dive in search of new mysteries. The ocean, vast and largely unexplored, still held countless secrets waiting to be uncovered. But now, with the experience of the wagon behind him, he approached every dive with a renewed sense of respect and curiosity. He understood that beneath the waves, history could be preserved in ways that were unimaginable on land, and that sometimes the smallest details, a rusty hinge, a faded letter, a discarded coin, could hold the keys to extraordinary stories. The story of the sunken wagon eventually reached international audiences. Exhibitions, documentaries, and articles highlighted the journey of discovery from the ocean floor to the museum display. Alex often visited these exhibitions, watching visitors marvel at the instruments, letters, clothing, and coins. He saw children pressing their faces against the glass cases, imagining the adventures of the people who had once owned these items. He watched adults pause, lost in thought, connecting with the lives of people long gone. It was clear that the wagon had sparked something bigger than himself. It had inspired curiosity, learning, and wonder in everyone who encountered it. In quiet moments, Alex reflected on the extraordinary journey. He remembered the thrill of the first sighting, the tension of opening the rusted door, and the amazement of seeing the wagon's contents for the first time. He thought about the months of careful planning and collaboration, the teamwork required to lift the wagon from the ocean floor, and the painstaking efforts to preserve every artifact. Through it all, he felt gratitude for the opportunity, for the ocean that had protected these treasures, and for the people who had trusted him to share the story responsibly. Ultimately, the discovery became a lesson about the enduring power of history. Objects submerged for decades could still tell stories, connect generations, and inspire wonder. Alex realized that the ocean was more than a mysterious expanse of water. It was a guardian of memory, a silent witness to human life and activity. By uncovering the wagon, he had become part of that continuum, bridging the gap between the past and the present, and ensuring that the stories preserved underwater would continue to be told. The sunken wagon, with its incredible contents, became a symbol not only of discovery, but of respect for history, patience, and curiosity. Alex often thought about the moment he first saw it on the ocean floor, how small he had felt, how immense the mystery seemed, and how much he had learned in the process. The journey had changed him, deepened his appreciation for the world beneath the waves, and strengthened his commitment to uncovering and preserving history. Even years later, the story of the wagon lived on. Artifacts were displayed, letters and journals studied, and researchers continued to uncover new insights from the discovery. Alex would sometimes visit exhibitions, quietly observing people reacting to the very same items he had once held underwater. Each time, he was reminded of the magic of discovery, the way the ocean had kept a secret for decades, and how one person's curiosity could bring it back to life. The wagon had become more than a relic. It had become a legacy, a reminder that the world was full of hidden stories, waiting patiently for someone to find them. For Alex, the most lasting impact was the understanding that exploration and history were inseparable. The wagon was not just treasure. It was a testament to the lives and stories of people who had come before, preserved in silence beneath the waves. He realized that sometimes the most extraordinary adventures were not just about what you found, but what those discoveries revealed about humanity, time, and the enduring mystery of the world around us. The sunken wagon, once forgotten, had returned to share its story, and Alex had been its witness, bringing the past into the present in a way that would be remembered for generations.